What's going on, guys, and welcome to #AskGSM here today, episode 362 for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well, especially this week, because this week has been nuts. We had Election Day yesterday here in the States. It's still ongoing as I speak right now on Wednesday morning. It's probably still going to be going on for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, if not later. It's a crazy time right now, but my goal with this episode of Hashtag, as always, is to get your mind off of everything going on right now. We're not even going to talk about that stuff here today. No political questions. Let's talk all about wrestling. That's what you guys came here to hear about. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So on that note, let's get right into it here today. Actually, two quick cheap plugs. So last Wednesday I talked about how I talked to Cameron Grimes here on the channel, and for DailyDDT.com. That's where the article version of the interview went up. Today, on DailyDDT.com, and the audio version, which should be up either a little bit later on today, either before or after this video, my exclusive interview with NXT's own, the NXT North American Champion coming off of Halloween Havoc last week, Johnny Gargano. Very fun interview coming to the channel later today, and the article version going up on DailyDDT.com. So be sure to check that out. I do have potentially one other in the works for later on in the week, so as I always say, no better time to subscribe than right now to the channel for more daily content. Hit that bell button to be notified every time a video goes up. And yeah, great time to be subscribed right now between hashtag exclusive interviews. We got, WrestleRant radio excerpts, WWE Network and Chill reviews, SmackDown reviews, and so much more. So let's get right into the YouTube questions first. First from Noah Laura, who sent in questions from YouTube and on Facebook, and they were all pretty good questions, so we'll attempt to answer them all here. But their first question was, do you see Alexa Bliss being the Raw Women's Champion and The Fiend being the WWE Champion as a power couple on Raw? That is definitely likely. I don't know. I mean, I could very well see The Fiend winning the championship instead of Drew McIntyre. And McIntyre, it's very likely that he could get the belt right back from Orton as soon as TLC. And honestly, that's what I want to see happen. I wouldn't complain with The Fiend being the WWE Champion, but he's already had 2 title reigns. I mean, one of them lasted a week, I realize that, but he's already had 2 title reigns in the last year. I like The Fiend a lot. I'm not opposed to him winning the championship at some point. I just think it's too early into his Raw run to be doing that right now. After already having the Universal Championship over on SmackDown, winning it again at SummerSlam, The Fiend, I mean, he can be in the WWE title picture. That's totally fine. I just don't think he should win it. Especially since who do you have him face at WrestleMania if he wins it at December's TLC pay-per-view, for example? I guess it's better than Orton and Edge for the millionth time. Not for the millionth time, but that's not really a WWE Championship match I could get behind. But is it really that better? I don't know. Because at least that's a logical match for Orton to have at WrestleMania. If The Fiend is champion going into WrestleMania, who do you have him face? Jeff Hardy, The Fiend and Willow, or Jeff Hardy? That's a good WrestleMania match. For the WWE Championship, probably not. But maybe not right away, but at some point, yeah, The Fiend is WWE Champion. Asuka is the current Raw Women's Champion. Alexa Bliss could be the person to take the title from her. And honestly, I don't know if I would hate that. So it's definitely a possibility. I think it would be cool, and maybe at some point we can see that. And it's also been long enough since we saw Bliss as a singles champion in WWE that I would not hate that idea whatsoever. It's been over 2 years since she was last Raw Women's Champion, so I would totally be all for that idea at some point, maybe not necessarily soon, but on the later side, potentially. No's second question, top 5 best Survivor Series matches, and do you think there would be a Super Cena if Brock Lesnar never left WWE in 2004? I think Cena probably still would have gotten his push. I don't know if Batista would have gotten his push. The only reason Randy Orton won the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam 2004, a big reason, it wasn't incredibly random because Orton was still very popular at the time, even before Brock left the company, but it was because they wanted to erase Brock's record of being the youngest world champion in WWE history. Brock set that record a fucking, 2 years earlier? 2 years earlier. So it was no coincidence that 6 months after he left, they put the belt on a 24-year-old Randy Orton, who probably should not have been in that spot at that point. and they took the belt right off of him. So it was pretty evident that they just did that to break the record, or break to break Brock Lesnar's record of being the youngest champion ever, because they were bitter towards Brock. I mean, Orton still would have been successful, I think. Batista, I don't know if he would have gotten over the same way and been pushed the same way, because they already kind of had a Goliath and a monster in Brock. Not that you don't need two, but, I mean, Brock, SmackDown was the Brock show. Batista really got his, he rose up initially on Raw in the feud with Triple H, but he was put over on SmackDown to be the star of that show for a number of years, for like 4 or 5 years. Would he have gotten that same push if Brock was around? Probably not. So I think we still would have gotten Super Cena, as you said. Cena was already well on the rise by 2004. He won the United States Championship at WrestleMania 20, the same show that Brock Lesnar quit at, that he had his last match at before coming back in 2012. I think they already had plans to push Cena towards that top level. It may not have happened to WrestleMania 21. I think it would have happened eventually. Batista is the one that I don't think would have had as much of a main event run over on SmackDown had Brock stuck around. As far as the top 5 best Survivor Series matches are concerned, I mean, it's so difficult because there's so many good ones. Are you talking like the Survivor Series elimination matches themselves, or just normal matches? I mean, there's a lot of good ones from the early 80s, the late 80s, the early 90s. Those early installments have some really fun elimination matches. I can't really say what the best are, but as far as matches I can remember, like in the last couple of years alone, for as much as I hate the whole dumb Raw and SmackDown bullshit, we've gotten some really, really good matches in Survivor Series history in the last few years alone. From those elimination matches, from the Raw versus SmackDown, and even sometimes NXT, as in last year, matches. Brock and AJ was awesome. Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair was great. Brock Lesnar and Daniel Bryan was a fantastic match. The Shield and the New Day had a great match. I mean, again, the brand supremacy stuff is terrible, but from an in-ring standpoint, the last 3 or 4 installments of Survivor Series have actually produced some really, really good matches. Before that, I couldn't even tell you. I loved the Team Authority versus Team Cena match from Survivor Series 2014. I thought that was masterful. So that would probably be on my list. The Sting debut in that same match was just very well done. Ziggler's, win, being the sole survivor and all, even though it amounted to nothing. He went back to being a mid-carder right after, but they pulled the plug on that push pretty quickly. But anyway, I love that match. Before that, there's not a lot of matches that really come to mind in the last, I really like John Cena, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels from Survivor Series 2009. The build sucked. The match itself I thought was great. Before that, Survivor Series 03, Team, I almost said Team Hogan, Team Bischoff versus Team Austin was a fantastic match. Really, really enjoyed that. Again, I'm sure there's more I'm not thinking of. Team WWE versus Team Alliance in 01. The whole feud sucked, but it culminated in a big way with that big match at Survivor Series 01. The Montreal Screwjob obviously is notable. The match itself wasn't as great as their other encounters between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. I would not put that on the list, probably. It's not really a match, but the whole Deadly Games tournament from Survivor Series 98 was fantastic. I watched so many old pay-per-views back with Alexis earlier this year during the first few months of the pandemic. We watched that whole show, and she really enjoyed it. So if she can like that show, and it's an older show, then that just goes to show that it's good. It kept her attention. She liked the swerve at the end. That was well done. Again, there's more match. Obviously, Stone Cold and Bret Hart. That's another match I forgot about from 96. That's a fantastic match. There's a lot of good ones. To put a definitive list together would be tough, but off the top of my head, those are some of my favorite / best Survivor Series matches I can think of. So, next question, also from No Laura, this time on Facebook. Where do you see Thunder Rosa going, WWE or AEW? I discussed this in depth in a Bleacher Report article on Sunday, but I'm thinking AEW. So, the WWE thing was the initial belief. I think a lot of reporters, specifically Dave Meltzer, have kind of gone back on that and said, no, that's not the case. Not that I wouldn't be surprised if she went to WWE. I think she could do really, really well, especially in NXT. But does she get to keep the name, keep the look? Is she the same character that kind of brought her to superstardom in the first place this year? I would say if there's any one, I guess maybe 2 women's wrestlers that really broke out in 2020. You could say Rhea Ripley, but she really kind of broke out late last year. That really went from like obscurity to superstardom are Hikaru Shida, who was fantastic. She was signed, I think, late last year, but people didn't really get going on how good she is until this year. And definitely Thunder Rosa. I mean, I knew who Thunder Rosa was from her time in Lucha. She was in the NWA late last year, but when she won the Women's Championship in January, that's really when she started to get going. She's really, really good. So, and people now know who Thunder Rosa is, and I think the exposure on AEW really helped with that. So, the women's division in AEW is shit. Is it a case where you bring her in to help out the division, or is she brought in and then it's a mistake because that division's not a focal point? That's really the question. I still say AEW to me just feels like the better fit. I'm not one of those type of people to say, oh, fuck them for going to WWE. I think it'd be cool to see her in NXT. NXT is a stacked women's division. Same exact thing. Does she go to NXT and, women's wrestling is such a priority over there, does she get pushed right off the bat? Or, because there's so much star power as it is between Ember Moon, Io Shirai, Dakota Kai, Toni Storm, and all these other people, Candice LeRae, does she get lost in the shuffle? That's also a very, it's a very, it's something you have to consider. So I think AEW is the better fit. I wouldn't obviously be upset if she went to WWE. I wouldn't be upset if she went to AEW either. I think, I want to see her continue to do stuff with the NWA, but it looks like that's not going to happen. They lose more and more people by the week, it seems. Allison Kay, I just saw, announced her departure from the company. So it's not looking good for the NWA, unfortunately. But as far as Thunder Rosa is concerned, I'm thinking of the two, if she goes to either one, probably AEW. And the thing is that her stock has never been higher. Not that it won't ever be this high again. It could be, but you run the risk of, I'll go to AEW for a couple of years, and if I really want to go to... Some people don't ever have to go to WWE. At this point, you never have to actually go to WWE. It's not that big of a deal if you don't. There's some people I've always wanted to see there, like an AJ Styles, and we got that. But nowadays, with the competition that we have, you don't have to absolutely go to WWE. So, at any rate, Thunder Rosa, if she wants to run the risk of, it doesn't sound like to me that she hates the idea of going there. There's a few people that are like, okay, I have no interest in going there. Thunder Rosa, I think, would be interested if the offer was right, if it made sense, and creatively if it made sense as well. With her, it's one of those things where is the idea she'll go to AEW for a couple years, and then WWE will come knocking down her door again in a couple years? Or is this as hot as she's ever going to be? And when her AEW contract expires in a few years, they wouldn't want her. I don't know. If going to WWE is that important to her, I would say just go now. WWE is always going to be there, but will they want you at that point? That's the question. I think I would think so, but I still say going to AEW is the better option. I do. I think WWE, as well as she could do in NXT, I fear for her future on the main roster. And the same can be said for the rest of the NXT women's division as well, but specifically Thunder Rosa, who really got over, not only on her great in-ring ability, but her look, and she can talk, and she just has a great vibe, a great presence about her. And I'm not sure if they would keep that intact if she were to go there. No Laura, second question. Now with WWE owning the rights to WWE Superstars' Twitch channels, do you see anyone leaving WWE after this? They can't just up and quit, I don't think, but... I think people were already eyeing the door anyway as far as when their contracts are going to expire. I'm sure there's at least one or two people, if not more, they were already eyeing the exit that maybe after hearing this news want to get out even more. I hear that news. I don't think AJ Styles is going to go anywhere. I don't. He's one of their biggest stars, so he may have to suspend his channel. He's probably pissed about it, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Paige... it really depends. I think she kind of gets the gist that her career is over. I don't think it's going to be a Daniel Bryan situation where she goes somewhere else. I think that'd be nice, but her neck situation is as bad as it is. With it being as bad as it is, I don't think she can wrestle anywhere else. So will she quit? I'm glad she's speaking out. I'm very happy about that. Will she go anywhere else? I don't think so, but we'll see. Ah, man, who else was affected? Xavier Woods ain't going anywhere. He's got the whole up, down, down thing with WWE. That's not going anywhere. Mia Yim, her boyfriend works there. She just got started on the main roster. She's not, Retribution sucks, but I don't get the sense that she wants to leave, at least not right now. There might be more people I'm not thinking of. Maybe not those people necessarily, but I'm sure there's other people who got shafted by the whole Twitch thing and are pretty pissed about it and now want to leave. But I think there's a lot of... those people want to leave over that. They were probably going to want to leave anyway, because I'm sure that's the least of their worries. But this is a pretty big deal, though. This is a pretty big deal about the whole taking control of the Twitch channels. it's almost like a dictatorship in a way. I know it's in their contracts to a certain extent, but even if they were playing as just their real names, I don't see anything wrong with that. If it's a WWE name, I get it, but if it's their real names, I think that's bullshit. For WWE to take their accounts away for something as silly as that. But we'll see what happens from this, and I'm sure we will hear the inevitable shoot interview a year or two from now and fucking talk as Jericho. Maybe not even, maybe 6 months from now, where one of these people that got affected by this whole thing, comes on and says, oh, fuck, I wanted to leave. Fuck them for taking my Twitch channel. I knew in AEW they wouldn't take my Twitch channel and all this other stuff. So I'm sure that's coming before long. I can almost bet on that. At noob_n_co 1991 from Twitter. What are your thoughts on Reckoning calling out Asuka? Do you think this is a feud that fans are hyped for, or is it just becoming another joke? Reckoning, if you don't know what he's talking about, if you're like, when did Reckoning call out Asuka? It happened in a WWE.com exclusive video that went up on their website, WWE.com, and the WWE YouTube channel. Why, I have no idea. It seems like every week when these people are featured on Raw, they're made to look like losers, and then Ali and the rest of the group just cut promos later on in the show, with WWE thinking that might be making up for it when it really doesn't. I think the promo work from Ali and some of these other people has been really, really good. Ali specifically, but the way they're being booked, it doesn't cancel out. It's not like a great promo can cancel out the way they've been booked in recent weeks. It doesn't work like that. But the promo didn't even make the show this week. They put it on the fucking .com exclusive video shit. It wasn't even on Raw. So anyway, I think it's cool. Asuka needs a challenge. She wasn't even on the show this week. She was barely on last week. She was shown in a brief 10-second backstage segment with the Street Profits. She has zero direction right now as the Raw Women's Champion. The fact that Nia Jax versus Lana is the biggest women's feud on Raw right now is a fucking disgrace. Nia Jax sucks. Lana's even worse. Maybe. I mean, Lana doesn't injure people, so maybe not. The feud sucks. I had no desire to see Nia Jax wrestle twice this week on Raw. Please spare me of that shit. I mean, come on. We need to get Asuka here on the show. They have competition for Asuka. That's what pisses me off. And it's not like, oh, it's a brand supremacy thing. It's not like, oh, it's Survivor Series season. We'll take the month off. We'll get back to Asuka's feuds after the pay-per-view, which would make sense. But she's had no direction since the Sasha and Bayley feud ended, going to show that the only reason why she was on TV as much as she was because of Sasha and Bayley. After that feud ended, what the fuck did they do with her? She had a one-off match with Mickie James on Raw, which was good, but not as great as I hoped it would be. It was kind of built up out of nowhere. They did the Lana match a few weeks ago. Who the fuck cares? They did Zelina Vega as a challenger at Clash of Champions. Who the fuck cares? She beat her in like 5 minutes. Those aren't feuds. They're challengers of the month. We need a real feud with Asuka. And again, she has the challengers there. They have the talent for it. Peyton Royce makes sense. Lacey Evans makes sense. Shayna fucking Baszler makes sense. They're too busy doing the fucking dumb tag team thing with her. But she makes sense. Alexa Bliss at some point would make sense. That's 4 people right there. And probably more I'm not thinking of. Charlotte could come back at some point. You can rekindle that rivalry. I don't really want to see Asuka and Charlotte again for like the 5th fucking time or whatever it is. But that's an option as well at some point. But as far as the people that are active, you have 4 people you could plug in that spot right now. But they're too busy worried about the fucking tag team division that means nothing, the titles that mean nothing, and brand supremacy shit that means nothing. Who cares? Get Asuka on the show. I feel like it's one way or the other with these people. Either they don't feature Asuka at all, or she's overexposed to shit. Like I was saying a couple of months ago, she felt overexposed. She was on Raw, she was on NXT, she was on SmackDown. Just because you can put them on every show doesn't mean you should put them on every show. Asuka was on every brand for like a solid 2 months, and it was fucking ridiculous. But you can have her appear on Raw almost every week. If she's not going to be on the show, then do a video package or do a promo backstage or something. I mean, to not have the Raw Women's Champion on the show at all is a little stupid. It's a little questionable. When you have a lot of women that are already on the show for literally no reason at all. Why did we have to have Nia Jax and Lana on the show this week? The answer is we didn't. Save that shit for main event or just don't do it at all. Put Asuka on the show, give her a real feud. To answer your question, yes, I like the Reckoning and Asuka feud. The whole Reckoning name is fucking sucks. Mia Yim versus Asuka could be a good feud. Mia Yim came into WWE right after Asuka left NXT, so I'm not sure. They may have done the match as like a one-off, like when Mia was a jobber before she was signed. Actually, that's a good question. I'd have to look that up. Like I know with Zelina Vega, actually, they did that match in NXT TV a couple of years ago when Vega was brought in for a one-off. And they did Vega. I think Vega's first WWE match before being signed was against Asuka in NXT. And Mia Yim might have faced her too at some point. I have to look that up. From an in-ring standpoint, it has potential, but the whole Retribution shit is just terrible, so I have to temper my expectations a little bit. At Ewagoon91, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Gresham winning the Ring of Honor, I don't know why I said 2020 or whatever, the Ring of Honor Pure Wrestling Championship. So yeah, Gresham won the championship this week on the show. I think it's really cool. I was hoping for Tracy Williams. Gresham has already got the whole... He's won half of the tag team champions. He's with Jay Lethal. I don't think he needs to be the pure champion too. Tracy Williams has built up a lot of momentum in this tournament. I mean, as did Gresham, but Williams has got nothing going on right now. They had the perfect story there. First of all, his style perfectly fits that title. But more importantly, they told the story of he went for the World Championship last year, I think against Matt Taven, and lost. He went for the Ring of Honor Television Championship at one point and fucking lost. He went for the tag titles at one point and fucking lost. So for him to finally win his first championship in Ring of Honor in the form of the Pure title just made too much sense to not do. Gresham's style perfectly fits that belt as well, but I just felt like Williams would have been the better choice. But nonetheless, it was a very good match. The tournament, by the way, was fantastic. And I don't think I've enjoyed Ring of Honor TV this much in years. Because it would always be an inconsistent format. For the past year, they would put, pandemic aside, they would put rematches or replays of matches they already did at the house shows and the live events on Honor Club that I already fucking saw. Why do I want to rewatch that shit? It was a completely pointless product. And even before that, when they were doing original matches, the show wasn't worth writing home about every week. It was just kind of there. And it kind of has a purpose again with the tournament. Now it's over. But EC3's on the show right now. They're still doing the whole Taven and Vincent feud. The show has been actually great the last 2 months, the last month and a half or so. And I would implore everyone to check it out. It probably is one of the best wrestling shows all week. And not Dark, which has 15 fucking matches in the span of 2 hours. That's not a wrestling show. That's a lot of just garbage. It's WWE superstars on steroids. Fucking stop with the whole, Dark is the best wrestling show of the week. How? It's 15 squashes with people I don't give a fuck about. Storylines that mean nothing for the most part. It's just a waste of time. It's 15 straight matches. God forbid if we got that at WrestleMania, which should be... Would that make WrestleMania the greatest wrestling show of the year? Because they have as many matches as they do? Quality over quantity, people. Ring of Honor does maybe 2 matches a week for an hour. And it's fucking great. 15 matches in 2 hours, and I can't stress this enough about Dark, is ridiculous. I just feel like I'm losing brain cells watching that show. Anyway, going back to his questions. His next question, do you see MJF joining the Inner Circle? I don't. I think so. If MJF beats Jericho on Saturday, Jericho said he would allow MJF to join the Inner Circle. He never said you're in. He would just allow him. And maybe that was, he misspoke. But I feel like they worded it that way for a reason, where MJF is going to win, and then he'll just be like, you know what, I'm all set. He'll either join the Inner Circle, which I don't think is going to happen. He could lead the Inner Circle, which is more likely, I think, and he'll bump Jericho from the group. And then, or the other option is just to not have him join at all. And he beats Jericho and just kind of gets the better of him and says, you know what, I'm too good for your group, I don't want it. And then debuts either another faction or just goes back off on his own. Because I don't really think MJF needs a faction. So no, I don't see him joining the Inner Circle. I just don't see a spot for him in the group. I think the 5-man... at Inner Circle at this point is a fucking waste. I've said this before, but they've lost so much in the last year. Jericho has not won an important match probably all 2020 long. He lost to Orange Cassidy twice. He lost to John Moxley, lost the championship to Moxley. He lost the Stadium Stampede match. He's probably going to lose to MJF. The guy's a fucking loser. I like Jericho when he has credibility, but he's not the same top guy that he was a year ago. I realize he's 50, and he probably shouldn't be, but they need credible heels on the show, and Jericho right now is just not one of them. I just don't really take him seriously. Jake Hager has done nothing of note. Sammy Guevara can never fucking win a match. Santana Ortiz can never fucking win a match. It's just a bunch of losers. I mean, they have good chemistry together, and the matches aren't bad, but as the inner circle, it's just a complete waste. They got to disband the group. So MJF joining them or leading them, to me, just doesn't do a lot for me. Do you think that Kenny Omega will win the tournament at Full Gear? I do. It's obviously between him and Page. I mean, I was going to say that we don't know what the finals are yet, but we do. They confirmed that last week. Either Adam Page wins and Omega turns on him afterward, but we still get Page and Moxley at some point. I don't see Page beating Moxley. Or Omega wins by cheating, and that's how he turns heel. And then he goes on to face and beat Moxley for the championship. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. That's what I think should happen. And it should be a great match nonetheless. I'm not sure if we've ever gotten Adam Page versus Kenny Omega before. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that's about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with those two. And I thought I was going to say something else about Omega and Page, but yeah, I'm all in on Omega with this new heel character that he seems to be moving toward, becoming the next AEW World Champion. I think it just makes too much sense to not do. Back to @noob_n_co1991. What are your thoughts on Kylie Rae retiring from wrestling for the second time? What other wrestling promotions do you think she will sign with when she comes back? I don't know if she is coming back. Now, I know people are saying, oh, they always come back. And she very well could. She's very young, I believe. But this is a pretty serious thing. It's not like ACH. I mean, he has problems too, but the guy's just a fucking idiot. With some of the stuff that he said and some of the stuff that he did. He was a bit of a different story. He was a bit more problematic. And obviously, he has to have some issues too, with the way that he was acting late last year, early this year. That guy was just a moron. Kylie Rae is not stupid. She just has a lot of mental problems, I believe, mental issues, mental health problems. I don't know for a fact. I'm just saying I think she's talked about this before. She did say that she was unwell when she put out that note on her Patreon or whatever, saying that she was done with wrestling. Again, is there a good chance she'll be back at some point? For sure. But I tend to take this a bit more seriously than ACH, who said he was done and then came back like a fucking month later because the guy's a baby. Kylie Rae, I think it's a bit more serious. So it sucks. It sucks. I don't think you said for the second time. I think this is the first time. Yeah, she left AEW last year, but she never said she was done. I don't even think we heard from her for a while. Here it was like, okay, I'm not well. I'm done. I'll talk to you guys later. Last year it was just like she disappeared. And no one really knew what happened and whatever. So this is a bit different. She never said she retired. She just disappeared for a few months and then she came back. She didn't say she was done last year. She did say that here, though. And that really sucks, because I like Kylie Rae. I don't love the whole smiley, over-the-top babyface shit. I know Bayley used to do it, and I loved it when she did it, but it's even cheesier when Kylie Rae does that. Maybe that's who she is as a person. I don't know. It didn't do a lot for me. But as a wrestler, she was really, really good. She was a great asset to that, Knockouts division and Impact. And now she's gone, which sucks. But hopefully she's doing better. Hopefully she does better, gets well soon. And it would be nice for her to come back at some point, but if it's not what she wants to do, then more power to her, because no one's going to force her to come back, nor should they. She's got to do what's best for her, and if this is what's best for her, then that's great. At E13A, their question was, who do you think were the best and worst WWE United States champions? So he sent me a link to a Reddit list that someone made, that ranked all the he said WWE United States champions that he wanted to discuss. So I looked at the list. It's not a bad list, and I tend to agree with a lot of it. Obviously, the greatest WWE United States champion, and I will take no other fucking answer, is John Cena. Held the belt 5 times, elevated it in the early 2000s, elevated it for fucking sure in 2015, which was the most prestigious championship in the entire company in 2015, and I, again, will not hear otherwise. Had a lot of great matches, elevated a lot of people, elevated the championship for sure. John Cena is undoubtedly the greatest United States champion this company has ever had. I mean, he has to be. There's no doubt in my mind that he is. The other people they put on the list, they put MVP at number 2. And I agree with that. MVP, when I think of that championship, or at least the original design, I think of MVP. For the year that he held it for, he won it back for a brief bit in 2009, I think. Actually, for more than a bit. It was like 3 or 4 months, I think. But yeah, I think of MVP. He had a really long run, defended it against a lot of people. Had like a honky-tonk like reign, where he lost a bit, but you wanted to see him get his ass kicked. And it was a big moment when he eventually lost that championship. So those two I agree with. They probably are the best champions there are. The list goes on to write Rusev at number 3, Benoit at 4, Cesaro at 5, Eddie at 6. Rusev had some good reigns. Is he number 3? Hey, I don't think of Rusev as being one of the greatest United States champions. Maybe there just really isn't a bar there. I think Benoit is better than Rusev. Benoit might even be better than MVP. Benoit had some really good reigns, some great matches, elevated the championship. Eddie, wait a second. Did Benoit win it first in 03 or did Eddie win it first? I think it was Eddie. But Benoit won it a bunch. Obviously, he won it in WCW too, I think as well. But in WWE, he won it a bunch, had some really good matches, held it for a while, had some pretty long reigns, elevated the championship, gave him something to do post World Heavyweight Championship in 2004, elevated MVP in the process right before he dropped it in 2007. So, yeah, I mean, Benoit has got to be, I think he's higher than Rusev. Rusev's first run was good. He also kind of helped elevate it a little bit. You know, he had the feud with John Cena, and he went on to WrestleMania with it, and had a pretty good reign. The second one in 2016 was actually a very underrated reign. Faced practically nothing but losers, but he was keeping it warm until Roman Reigns won it. But it was still, you know, he was still a good champion that year. And the third time, he held it for like a fucking month, and that barely even matters. So I would put Benoit over Rusev. Cesaro had a good reign, too. The issue with Cesaro, it was a good fit for his career when he was doing the whole foreigner thing. The problem was that the title was a fucking joke. Like, he was defending it every month, but like on the undercard of the pay-per-views against Justin Gabriel, R-Truth, you know, people like that, Santino Marella, Ted DiBiase, or maybe not. Was it Ted DiBiase? I thought he faced Ted DiBiase at one point. Maybe not. But he faced people like that throughout his entire reign. No one really cared. It was a big deal when he lost it, but just because, I think it was because they were in Kofi's hometown, so when Kofi won it in his not hometown, but he lived in Boston or has a tie to Boston, whatever. Kofi does went to school there or something. So he won the championship there, and it was a big deal. Or maybe they weren't in Boston. I think what it was, Kofi, I don't know where they were for that show. The Boston bombing was the same day. I remember that. I don't know if that was why Kofi won the championship or if that was always the plan. It just kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. It felt like a feel-good moment to kind of make people forget about what happened earlier on in the day. Because Kofi, again, isn't from Boston, but he, I think, grew up there or at least went to school there. But anyway, going back to Cesaro, it was a good run. Didn't even defend the championship at WrestleMania. So, I mean, how good really was it? I don't know if I would put him at number 5. Eddie, his time with it was memorable, they write. You know, he had a really good reign. I would probably put him over Cesaro. You got The Miz. I'd probably put The Miz a lot higher. I associate that championship more with The Miz than a lot of these other people. Benjamin had a good reign. Bryan had a good reign. Ambrose had a really long run at number 10, though. I mean, he just didn't do a lot as champion, though. I mean, he held the belt for almost a year, yeah, but, like, after a certain point, the guy never even fucking defended it. I don't know. The list is good, but it's like a lot of these people, I feel like a lot of these people just held it to hold it, and that was about it. Anyway, going down to the bottom of the list, that was the best champions. For the worst, they put Bret Hart, who held it for like a week, so obviously he would probably be the worst. Tajiri, honestly, I don't even remember that. I mean, he won the championship before it became the WWE United States title, so I probably wouldn't count that. Yeah, he won it while the championship was in WWE, but not after it was rechristened as the WWE United States Championship. So I don't even know if I would put him on the list. Del Rio, they put him as one of the worst. I don't know if I would put Del Rio as one of the worst. He had a very forgettable run, but he won it back in such grand fashion that I think to put him underneath fucking, who did they even have on here? Jack Swagger? Like, Jack Swagger's was terrible. No one cared when he won it. No one cared when he lost it. Del Rio, yeah, he's a horrible human being. Listen, I completely agree. I completely agree. The guy's a piece of shit. But at least when he held the championship, it was a bit of a bigger deal than some of the other people they put on this fucking list. Jinder Mahal won the championship at WrestleMania, lost it 8 days later. He's one of the worst they have on here, which I agree, that was a fucking joke. So anyway, yeah, that was their list. I agree with the worst. I agree with the best for the most part. I would change up some of the rankings, but overall, I think they hit it pretty spot on. At E13A's second question here, Do you think The Miz could make a second WWE Championship reign work, or does he not have enough momentum compared to others like Drew McIntyre and Bray Wyatt to be worth it? Definitely the latter. Now listen, you will not find a bigger Miz fan than myself. Very few people are as big of a Miz fan as me, and have been as for as long as me. I do not think The Miz should win the WWE title. Would I like it as a fan? Yeah, because I like The Miz. From a booking standpoint, is it smart? No. Absolutely not. The guy has literally lost almost every fucking match he has had in 2020. At least since he and Morrison lost the tag titles to the New Day back in April. Like, literally, if you look at this guy's win-loss record, you know what? Fuck it. Let's look it up right now. Let's look it up right now. I'm telling you, like, this guy never fucking wins. He lost to, or he beat, what's his name? Otis at Hell in a Cell, but other than that, like, the guy's on TV almost every week and literally loses every time. To the point where I thought, okay, there's got to be a reason here why he's losing. They're splitting up him and Morrison. They're turning him face or something. Nope, they just had him lose for the sake of fucking losing. So let's see. He and Morrison lost to McIntyre this week on Raw. He lost to McIntyre 1-on-1 last week on Raw. He did beat Otis at Hell in a Cell, but before that, he and Morrison lost to Heavy Machinery on Raw. He and Morrison lost to Jeff Hardy and Matt Riddle on SmackDown. Morrison and Miz lost to Heavy Machinery on SmackDown. They lost a 6-man with Sheamus to Big E and Heavy Machinery on SmackDown. They did beat Heavy Machinery, I guess. Or no, it was a draw. That doesn't count. They faced Heavy Machinery in a draw in early August. That doesn't count. It's not a win. I know that for sure. Big E and The Miz. He lost to Miz. Miz lost to Big E in July. He lost to Jeff Hardy in July. Let's see. Cesaro, Morrison, Nakamura, and Miz lost an 8-person tag to Big E, Gran Metall, Kofi, and Lince Dorado in June. Miz and Morrison lost to Braun for the Universal Championship at Backlash. He lost the 6-man with Dolph to Braun and Heavy Machinery in June. He lost to Braun 1-on-1 in May. He and Morrison lost to Strowman and Otis in May. He lost at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, failed to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Morrison, and Forgotten Sons did win an 8-man tag team match right before Money in the Bank, but that's about it. Like, he and Morrison did beat Otis and Tucker before Mania via DQ, didn't pin them. They lost to fucking Lucha House Party in April, and they lost the tag titles in April. So, altogether, Miz and Morrison, or at least Miz, won one match in May. He beat Otis at Hell in the Cell, and that's it. The guy has literally won 2 fucking matches in like 6 months. That's ridiculous. And you want me to believe that he's going to be the next WWE champion? Get the fuck out of here. That makes no sense. I'm not talking to you, Emmanuel. I'm just saying in general. Like, this company wants to make me believe that he could be the next champion. Give me a fucking break. If it's not a 5-minute run, then it's a complete waste. So, no, it's not going to work. It would have worked. The thing is that this company doesn't know timing. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But in this case, they don't. Miz has been busting his ass for a decade now to get back to where he was 10 years ago as WWE champion. He has done better work in the last couple of years than he ever did as WWE champion, and I enjoyed that reign. He did better work in 2016 when he did the Talking Smack promo. He reinvented himself, had a good 2017, had an even better 2018. When he went back to SmackDown, beat Daniel Bryan, he should have won the championship either in 2016 or in 2018. Or in 2019 when he was a babyface. He was really hot going into WrestleMania, and then he fucking lost to Shane multiple times, and then it was never the same. So I don't know, man. I just don't think that's going to work. So hopefully it doesn't cash in successfully. And again, I think it'd be cool as a fan, but like for me anyway. But like overall, I got to think for the better booking for the betterment of the company. Absolutely not. That'd be a joke. His next question: what's going to happen this Saturday at AEW Full Gear? I don't know, but it looks like a good show on paper. I will say that. All Out, I just thought the build to All Out wasn't great. Not that the build to Full Gear has been much better, but All Out just didn't do a lot for me. There wasn't a lot of matches on the card I was like overly anticipating. I liked the tag title match. I liked Moxley and MJF. The rest of the card didn't do a lot for me. I mean, Cheetah and Rosa was great too, obviously. That kind of stole the show, I think. But at Full Gear, you have a lot of matches that could steal the show. The Bucks and FTR, the build has been butchered. I mean, not butcher and blade, and it hasn't been completely awful, but it's not as great as it should have been. But that could be a great match. Omega and Page could be a great match. We know Cody and Darby Allin work really well together. Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston could be a really fun match. Sheeta and Rose, we know, can have a good match. I've seen the Double or Nothing. So the card does have potential on paper. Jericho and MJF could be a lot of fun. It has potential on paper, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think MJF is going to win. I think Moxley retains. I think Omega becomes the number one contender. I think Cassidy beats John Silver on the pre-show. I think Shida holds on to the women's title. I think Cody holds on to the TNT title. And I think the Young Bucks are probably going to win the tag titles. I mean, the whole stipulation, if we lose, we can never go for them again, is so fucking dumb. They did it that same exact show a year ago with Cody. I mean, it was dumb then. It's even worse now. Because it's way too soon for FTR to be losing. But they'll probably lose anyway. Next question comes from @RJ_Marceau from the Twitter machine. Mr. Marceau's question was, during the Ruthless Aggression era, we saw a lot of new young talent on WWE TV. A majority of them failed due to bad booking and premature pushes. What superstars do you think could have been bigger than they were? That's a good question. Like RJ said, he just texted me this morning about watching like Survivor Series 03 and then being reminded of how many fucking losers there were on the roster at that point. Now, there were a lot of people they tried to push that fucking sucked. Nathan Jones sucked. I did not like Luther Reigns. I thought he sucked. Kenzo Suzuki, not that he was bad, but just a very forgettable dude. Like, didn't really do much of note. Maybe he was better than I thought he would be. I mean, I wasn't watching at that point, so I can't really attest how good some of these people are. But I can tell you from watching certain shows that some of these people are really fucking bad. Now, I will say this to kind of preface my answers here, that I consider the Ruthless Aggression era to be from 02 to 05. I guess technically it kind of went until like 06, 07, 08. And if we're including those years, I mean, 05 to 08 included so many guys that could have gone further than they did. That includes Mr. Kennedy is obviously like number one on a lot of people's lists. Kennedy, Carlito, MVP. Like a lot of those people were like glorified mid-carders, but I think they could have been world champion if they really tried. And the scene at that point was dominated by Edge, Orton, Taker, Cena, Triple H, Batista, Rey Mysterio, people like that. So they never really had a shot. But, you know, those type of people, Matt Hardy, could he have been a world champion in WWE beyond the ECW championship? Maybe. He was another guy that could have, you know, been a little bit bigger than he was. There was another guy I was just thinking about. Umaga. Umaga, I think, could have been a world champion, booked really, really well. He was initially built that first year in the main roster, was great, and then he lost to John Cena, and he was never the same after that. But anyway, from 02 to 05, a couple of people come to mind. Victoria, I think, is great. Never really got a fair shake. She was a multi-time women's champion, I believe. Very good wrestler, but like it felt like the crazy thing to me is that she was in that company until like 2009. She started there in 01 or 02 or something. She was there for a long time. Barely won many, didn't win many titles. Wasn't involved in much of note beyond her initial year or two in the company. Gail Kim's another one. I mean, Gail Kim could have gone a lot further than she did, and she was gone relatively quickly. Gail Kim left the company, came back, and then left again all in that time from like 02 to 09. I guess she left in 2011, but she came back in 09 though. Victoria never really got a fair shake. I think she could have been a bigger star in that division than she was, given how good she was. Gail Kim too. For the men, there were a bunch of people that came to mind. There's probably more I'm not thinking of, but the world's greatest tag team was only around for like a year. They could have been bigger than they were, like American Alpha. They had more success than Alpha did, I believe. But specifically Shelton Benjamin, he was a guy that I think could have gone further than he did. A lot of people thought he had main event potential. He was one of those guys where in today's WWE, would he be a world champion? No. But back then, when they didn't have a lot of people that could do what he could do, that were as exciting to watch as he was, I think it could have worked maybe on SmackDown. It could have maybe worked. I know his mic skills were not the greatest. He may have had an attitude problem, but I think that could have worked. So Benjamin, I think, could have gone further than he did. I don't know if this is a good answer or not. Probably not. I've always been very interested in why Heidenreich didn't work out. Was he just that bad? Like, I never thought he was terrible from watching his matches. I mean, the guy, he was not a great wrestler, but he felt like a Braun Strowman type character that they really could have done more with. From me watching him and just from those early pay-per-views, those 04, 05 pay-per-views, 06 pay-per-views, he felt like a guy that could have gone further in the company. And just never did. Snitsky never did anything for me whatsoever. Heidenreich, though, I think could have been a good monster heel for SmackDown if they booked him properly. Maybe he was like the initial version of a Vladimir Kozlov who just went nowhere. But Heidenreich, I mean, obviously he had the Taker feud and nothing happened beyond that. But he felt like a guy that could have done a little bit more. Orlando Jordan, kind of the same thing. I've heard stories that he was pretty bad. I never really thought he was terrible from what I have seen, but that was only really on pay-per-view. And Benoit kind of brought the best out of him in a few different matches. He felt like a guy they were priming for like a big spot. He won the United States Championship, and then he just wasn't on the show after that. After the whole JBL thing ended, he was not heard from again. He was on. He was still with the company for like another year or two, but then he got cut, and that was about it. He comes to mind. Bobby Lashley could have been bigger back then, but that was like after 05, so I wouldn't include him in this list. Mark Jindrak had a very good look. Obviously, at one point, he was scouted for Evolution. That didn't work out. Jindrak is a guy that I could see being like, okay, I get it. I could see why they would want to push him. He's good. He's young. He's kind of like the next Randy Orton. But Orton kind of took over the spot that he may have had, that he was probably going to have. So that didn't work out. But yeah, Jindrak, the biggest for me was specifically, overall was La Resistance, that tag team. You never fucking hear their names brought up. They won the tag team titles a bunch. From like 02 through 05, they were tag team champions several times. They were around for a few years. They beat a bunch of teams. What happened with those guys? I mean, they were a staple of that division for quite a while. You never hear anything about that tag team. Ever, 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 ever. Specifically from that team, from that little stable, Rene Dupree, I thought was great. I was a big Rene Dupree fan from what I've seen of the guy. He felt like someone that really could have gone further than he did. He got a little mini push on SmackDown early on in 04 when they broke up La Resistance, but then they did nothing with the guy after that. Maybe he was just too young or too green. He was really, really young at that point. But I don't know. Dupree felt like a guy they could have done a lot more with than they did. So he's probably the biggest the biggest what if for me. Kenny Dykstra was another guy that I think could have gone further, but again, that was like after 05. Gregory Helms too, after he kind of he ditched the cruiserweight stuff. Like he was doing stuff that he should have been more of a mid-carder for. Like he could have been United States champion, but then they just didn't put the belt on him or whatever. I don't know, but with Dykstra though, he could have been a very good mid-carder for either show. And then he ran into some sort of roadblock, whether it be John Cena or someone else, I don't know. And that was the last we heard of Dykstra. And then he got fired a couple of years later. So, those are some of the people that come to mind from the Ruthless Aggression era that I think could have gone further in the company, in my opinion. Final question from @misdemeanor6. Do you think AEW is dangling a Wardlow turn? It's been a few times now MJF has reminded Wardlow about his contract with him, and the big guy doesn't look happy at all. They're obviously teasing it. I fucking hate the idea of the two splitting up. Now, Wardlow on his own could be good. I just think it's way too soon to be breaking them up. That's like if they did Evolution and Batista broke away like a year later. You know what I mean? Like they put Evolution together in 03. That's like if Batista broke away in early 04. I just think it's way too soon. Given another year or two, MJF needs a bodyguard. Not needs it, but it does really add to his act. Wardlow is a perfect person for that role. The weird thing is that they were teasing it. They stopped teasing it. They teased it again after All Out. They stopped teasing it. What the fuck are they going for here? Are they planting the seeds for a future split like down the road? Maybe. But then why do it now? So yeah, they are teasing it, but it's like, if you're not going to deliver it right now, I mean, I guess you could always plant the seeds for down the road, but it's not like a little Easter egg. Like, they were heavily teasing issues and tension between the two for weeks, and then it just was quickly dropped. I feel like AEW does that a lot. Like, WWE gets a lot of flack for doing like shit like that, and rightfully so, but I feel like AEW does that quite a bit as well, so hopefully they don't split up. I think that'd be dumb, and I just think, down the road, for sure, Wardlow on his own could be great. He has, like, he could be what Mason Ryan could have been. And Mason Ryan wasn't so bad in, like, 2011, 2012. A guy that has a great look and a guy that could go in the ring with his sheer power and athleticism and stuff like that. Mason Ryan could have been that guy. He just wasn't. It's probably who WWE thought he could be. Wardlow, he looks a little bit like Mason Ryan, but he's also good from what I've seen. So, on his own, I'm interested at some point. But down the road, down the road, just for right now, I think it'd be a very dumb idea to break those two up, especially now where MJF needs a group or whatever, as he says, and I think the only group that he really needs is Wardlow. He doesn't need a fucking stable. Not everyone needs a fucking stable. But for him, I think Wardlow and the MJF thing works. I think Wardlow works for MJF. I think MJF works for Wardlow. It's a pairing that just works. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 362 of #AskGSM. Here today, once again, for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I got to get going, not because of a time issue, although that is always kind of a factor, but because I'm having work done in my house. And if you heard any drills in the background over the course of this episode, that's probably why. And it's about to get a lot worse, I think. So, thankfully, I haven't had to pause the episode a lot due to that, but it's been getting louder gradually over the last 40 minutes since I started recording, 50 minutes. So, I got to get going here. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe. I cannot stress that enough. Subscribe for more daily content, including an exclusive audio interview with all new NXT North American champion Johnny Gargano. More to come. Last week we had Cameron Grimes, we had Jeff Hardy, we've had Finn Balor, Keith Lee, Triple H, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Paul Heyman. The list goes on and on and on. You're not going to want to miss it. Check out the exclusive interviews right here on the channel. I can hear the work being done on my house right now. That's why I got to get going. But if you want to send in a question, I'll mention this real quick, to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me at Facebook, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have a great one, guys. I know it's difficult right now with everything going on, but try to stay calm and, just try to relax. It'll all be over soon, hopefully for the better. But nonetheless, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.